Okay, so good day, guys. So this is our uh, last pre-lab discussion, no, for PMLS2. So this is about specimen handling and processing. So part of what we do in the laboratory is not just to collect samples, we also process them. So part of that is, of course, handling of the samples from the time that we have collected them up to the time that the samples are delivered into the laboratory, no? A specific laboratory, and then how they are uh, what we do with them after the processing is also included. It's part of our job. So the objectives of this particular activity is for you to be able to identify the different pre-examination errors that may occur during sample collection, labeling, transporting, and processing, to be able to list the criteria for specimen rejection, to explain time constraints and exceptions for delivery and processing of samples, and of course, to be able to describe the different methods of transporting samples. So note that, no, based on what you have learned in PMLS1, that all the activities inside the laboratory is part of the laboratory testing cycle. And there are about three phases, no, involving the labs. We have pre-examination or pre-analytical phase, the examination or the analytical phase, and then the post-examination or post-analytical phase. Of course, apart from these three phases, meron din tayong tinatawag natin clinical phase, which would be, which would occur between the physician and the patient. Okay, so the clinical phase usually occurs before pre-analytical and after post-analytical. Okay, so before pre-analytical, where the patients would visit their doctor, no? State their signs and symptoms, and then the doctor would determine what tests would be requested. And then after post-analytical, because after we have the results will be taken into the physician's office so that the physician would be able to determine what type of treatment should be given best for the patient. All right? So yun yung mga phases na ating testing cycle. Okay, so there are numerous variables that may affect the results. No, it could be the responsibility of the phlebotomist or the medtech who did the analysis, or it could be physiologic factors of the patient. No, it could be patient error. Sometimes patients lie about their signs and symptoms, and so hindi makadetermine yung physician ng tamang treatment regimen. Okay? Now, of course, one of the most common causes of errors involving the results in the laboratory would be the pre-analytical phase. Okay? So during the pre-analytical phase, daghan kaayo og errors, human errors na pwedeng, or clerical errors as they are usually called, that may be, that may occur. Okay, so these are errors that occur during the collection, no, prior to analysis of the sample. Now, this is a list of the common pre-analytical errors. So, kung fault ng phlebotomist, it could be misidentification of the patient, prolonged application of the tourniquet, which should not be right because it would cause hemoconcentration. Or wrong use of evacuated tubes. Okay? Errors during syringe collection, nag-collect kahit na hemolyze na or mali yung pag-insert ng needle, okay? Puncture sites, nagkaroon ng infection or ang tawag nito yung hematoma, okay? Or mali yung order of draw, ayan, no? And then, it would also be included in this group yung mga handling errors, no? Because there are some tests that would require special procedures. Like for example, when you need to do a test involving bilirubin, ang bilirubin is so sensitive to light, they break down no, when they're exposed, when the samples are exposed to light. And so dapat ang paglagyan natin ng samples for bilirubin assay would be charcoal coated or hindi siya yung transparent. Alright? Pag na-expose sa light. Okay? Or nainitan o nalabigan or may mga samples na dapat ay should be kept cold, hindi siya na kept cold, no? So yun ang mga common na errors ng phlebotomist. Okay? Now, what are the usual errors naman ng pasyente? Okay? So pwedeng some of the factors that may affect the results of the patient would be exercise. No? So nag-exercise siya prior to collection that may lead to an upsurge of some chemical components. No? Posture sometimes may affect results. No? So may mga hindi magandang kunan pag nakahiga. Ganyan. Okay? And there are certain cases where some analytes are best collected during the morning, some analytes are best collected during a specific time in the afternoon, no? And there are cases, ang pinaka-common is yung fasting samples, So may mga, like, for example, blood sugar, pag fasting blood sugar, no? So dapat nag-fasting yung patient. Or lipid profile, for example, dapat nag-fasting sa patient. Tapos sabi niya nag-fast, tapos hindi pala nag-fast. No? Tapos mataas yung mga results niya. Yan, no? So those are some of the factors that may affect the results, no? That's on the side of the patient naman. Okay, so let's go through the errors one by one. And note that the most common, most serious error, and most dangerous error is, of course, misidentification of your patient. Okay? That's why it's not ideal for you to ask them with you stating their name rather than them stating their own names. Okay? So minsan, di ba, nagiging impatient tayo. So, ikaw ba si ano, Ana? Mali, no? Dapat, ang tamang gawin is for them, for the patient, for the person seated on the patient's chair, na siya mismo ang magsabi ng pangalan niya. Because misidentification results to prescription of harmful or fatal treatment. O hindi naman pala siya yung may ari ng sample. Tapos yung sample, HIV positive, for example. Di ba? So, pinaka-importante, pinakaunang tamang gawin is for you to be able to identify the patient correctly. Next, another very common issue would be the prolonged use of the tourniquet or tourniquet rather. Okay, so the application of this apparatus would be less than 1 minute only. Okay? If you feel lost, no, or you cannot identify the correct vein or ideal vein to perform the procedure of venipuncture on, so you can remove it, no, let the patient's arm rest for some time, and then reapply the tourniquet before collecting blood. Okay, so at least hindi siya nakatingga ng matagal dun sa kamay ng pasyente. Okay, so that would again increase the intravascular blood pressure resulting to hemoconcentration. So ibig sabihin nun, magko-concentrate yung blood cells dun sa area kung saan may pressure na nakaabang. So mas mataas yung blood cells doon. So that would also of course affect the results. Okay? So it could lower the pH, which would lead to increased calcium and magnesium levels, or it could leak potassium from the blood cells, leading to false increased levels, and much more actually. The exercise and posture, how does this affect the results? Okay, so note that vigorous exercises usually result in the change in patient cell permeability. Okay, so nagkakaroon ng uh, overwork or fatigue no yung ating heart because they tend to pump faster when we exercise. Okay, so when that happens, it will also increase all the other chemical components. Yes, it will increase enzymes no, ng heart, and some of them may be reflected sa results and may mean cell damage, no? Kasi some of the heart enzymes may be released in cases of heart damage, no, tissue damage. So, nag-exercise ka lang, tumaas yung ano, hindi ka nagsabi. Okay? So, sa akalain ng physician, agoy, nag-myocardial infarction na ning atong pasyente, no, na heart attack na. Yung pala overwork lang yung heart kasi nag-zumba ng 2 oras. O, diba? Bago nagpakulit. Okay? And then long-term exercises also may cause or may lead to low RBC count. So nagmumukhang or low hemoglobin count. So nagbumukhang anemic yung pasyente. Okay, so magsabi if nanggaling ka sa exercise, no, or biglang tayo ka, no, sa posture, that may also affect results. So this is a list of the possible analyte change, okay, that may occur due to exercise and muscle stress. Okay, so all of them, see, ang change na pwedeng mangyari is increase. Okay, so ano yung mag-increase? Yung creatine kinase, CK, which also would increase in case of myocardial infarction. So pag may heart attack, mataas din ang level ng CK. Okay? Aspartate aminotransferase, lactate dehydrogenase, bilirubin, creatinine, uric acid, lactate, and pyruvate. Okay, of course, pyruvate is a product of byproduct ng cell activity, no? So ayan, dahil nga nag-exercise ka, di ang taas-taas ng mga levels ng mga analytes na ito. So magiging misleading yan at baka mabigyan ka ng maling treatment. Akalain ng doktor may sakit sa puso. Yung pala, nag-exercise ka lang, nag-cardio ka lang. No? Now, apart from those mentioned previously, your WBCs, no, particularly your neutrophils, would also increase. What else? Glucose may increase due to stress, and it may be decreased due to exercise. So, mababa ang glucose dahil kaka-exercise, or mataas ang glucose dahil sa nag-stress eating ka, nag-binge eating ka, no, dahil may stress. Okay? And then, hemoglobin, ayan. So, hemoglobin would decrease. Siyempre, remember, pag nag-exercise ka, pump ng blood si heart. Oh. So, dapat paspas pod ang pag exchange of gases, no? So, kailangan ng maraming oxygen ng mga cells dahil napapagod sila. So, ang ending nun, naubos yung iyong tawag niyan, yung hemoglobin stores mo or nag-decrease. Dahil sila naman yung may dala-dala ng oxygen, okay, na pwedeng ma-use up during strenuous activities. Now, the following naman are the changes that we can observe due to sudden change in posture. No? So, starting from lying down and then yung subsequent na pagtayo agad-agad. Okay? So, like for example, blood pressure. Okay? So, biglang tayo no? After sitting down or lying down. So, that will increase your blood pressure. Uh, change from pressure may also decrease blood volume. Whereas, calcium, cholesterol, lipids, drugs, steroids, and thyroid hormones will increase as an effect of the sudden change in posture. Bakit kamo? Siyempre, 'di ba, yung blood flow natin biglang mag-change when you, change your position from lying to standing up. So yung biglang tayo kaya minsan 'di ba 'pag biglang tayo, nahihilo-hilo tayo. Now, of course, one of the most common, na nako-collect natin from our patients are fasting samples. So especially if they are required for, say, lipid profile, no? Pag nagpa-test for cholesterol, total cholesterol, or triglycerides, or pag nagpa-test ng tawag nito ng kanilang fasting blood sugar, o dapat fasting. Okay? So we collect this from patients na na-advise, no, not to eat after a certain time. Usually nasa 8 to 12 hours ang fasting time. So mas maganda nun if they're advised to have their last meal at 8, no? At 8 p.m. Okay? So para mag-umpisa na sila ng count ng first hour by 9. Okay? Oh. At saka hindi rin naman maganda pag nag-overfast ang pasyente, no? So dapat nasa within 8 to 12 hours lang. Okay? So usually ang tawag natin doon ay NPO or non per orem or nothing by mouth or nil per os, nothing by mouth. Okay? So dapat si patient no, na-advise siya before. Okay? Dahil may mga pasyente na biglang sulpot lang sa lab, tapos ikaw pa pagagalin, hindi naman ako silipin to. Char. Okay, so trabaho naman yun ng doktor dapat sana, no? Na pagsabihin siyang, eto, walang ano yan ha, walang, bawal lang kumain from this time hanggang ganito. So kakain lang after na nakulang ka na ng dugo. Dapat si doc ang nagsabi niyan sa pasyente. Okay? Hindi rin kasi maganda din pag sumobra ng 8 to 12 hours. So, dapat sundan din yun. So for most patients, lalo na yung labas-pasok na sa lab. So pag sinabi mong nag-fast po ba kayo, they understand. However, there are some patients na dili kay kasabot. Okay, so ask them, no, nag-fast ka sir or ma'am. And then pag nagsabi na, yes, kailan po kayo last kumain? Ganun, may follow-up dapat na tanong. Hindi lang sapat yung, nag-fasting kayo ma'am, sir. Dapat, ma'am, kailan po kayo last kumain? Kailan kayo last uminom? Ganun. Para masakpan mo sila. Yes, nag-fast. Kaya sa kanas, ganina, bago ko nihawa diri pa. Okay, so at least na sakpan mo, what day siya nag-fast. No? So, bawal ang pagkain, anything solid, ang water sips lang, no? Sips lang. Pero as much as possible, dili na lang good oy, no? Kadali lang naman nun pag nakulang ka na. Tapos na, pwede ka nang kumain at uminom ng gusto mo. So, after mo makapag-collect ng blood sample ng fasting patient, kailangan sabihan mo siya, ma'am, sir, pwede ka na pong kumain. Unless meron pang sinabi si doc sa inyo na iba. Okay, so after collection, pwede na pong kumain. Baka kasi mamaya paglabas sa lab, na-collapse na yung pasyente niyo. So, minsan yung iba naman pwede na kumukaon sila mangutana. Okay? So, ask them, ma'am, wala na ba giingon si doc sa inyo ha? Kanilang. Kung kana lang, pwede na mukaon. Kaya nakuhaan naman kagdugo. Kana, no? And then, kung inpatient, usually may kasama naman yan na nurse aide or nurse, no? So, inform them na tapos na yung collection para si nurse na magsabi na pwede na kumain yung pasyente. Okay, also we have timed samples, so meaning there are a specific period, no, of time during the day where some samples should be collected. No? May mga samples na namimili ng oras. Okay? So sample collection for these types of specimen should be done at a precise time. No? So there are some substances that would exhibit diurnal effect, meaning iba yung level sa umaga, iba yung level sa gabi. No? So nagpa-fluctuate sila on the day-night cycle. Like for example, ang serum iron, no? Ang serum iron kasi magandang mag-collect ng sample during the morning, mga around 8 to 10 a.m. Okay? Or after nag-overnight fast siya ng 8 to 12 hours. No? So, nasa 8 to 10 a.m. tapos nag-fast si patient. So, timing is crucial kasi ang iron levels natin naturally nagpa-fluctuate yan throughout the day. So, typically, highest siya in the morning and then mababa na sa gabi, no, yung iron levels natin. And then for corticosteroids naman, no? So ang best time for collecting corticosteroid or cortisol samples, usually nagde-depend siya on the type of test being performed, no? So or depend po ano yung i-deduct, no? I-request na test, no? If for example, if you're going to collect cortisol to check for general adrenal function or to determine adrenal insufficiency. So the best time to collect samples for cortisol should be around 8 to 9 a.m. sa morning. Okay, so mga blood samples are typically collected early in the morning kasi cortisol levels natin are naturally at their peak. No? So, na-assess natin yung adrenal function during that time. Now, if the collection is for determination of Cushing syndrome, no, where ang mga pasyenteng may Cushing syndrome is expected to have excess cortisol, okay, ang collection nun maganda pag sa gabi, no, late night, around 11 p.m. to midnight. Okay, tapos saliva, ang mga samples na ginagamit natin. So they are often collected late at night, no? Pwede namang magpa-home service. Okay? So sa gabi, dahil lowest ang cortisol during that time. Okay? So kung mataas ang cortisol niya at gabi siya kinolektahan, so malamang may Cushing syndrome ang pasyente. Meron din naman tayong other methods, like for example, no, to determine Cushing syndrome, nagreseta ng dexamethasone, no, si physician. Okay, so we collect blood sa morning after taking a dose of dexamethasone sa gabi. Okay, so around 11 p.m. to 12 midnight siya pa inumin. Okay, so your dexamethasone would suppress, okay, cortisol levels dapat. So if for example, after taking dexamethasone, no, at mataas pa rin ang level ng cortisol, ibig sabihin nun, merong Cushing syndrome ang pasyente malamang. Alright? And there are also other hormones that have that would exhibit diurnal effect. No? Yung magkaiba yung level sa umaga, magkaiba yung level sa gabi. Okay, and may also collect yung say cereal, okay, collection ng time samples mo. So they should be collected 12 hours apart. Like for example, kung cortisol, and then nag-dexamethasone siya, so magkukulang ka 8 a.m. And then to confirm, no, magkulang ka ulit sa 4 p.m. Okay, so pag nag-dexamethasone sa gabi, magkukulang tayo ng sample sa morning around 8 to 9. And then, to check, we collect again at 4 p.m. na wala na siyang dexamethasone sa hapon because naturally cortisol should be lower in the afternoon. Yun. Okay? So evacuated tubes, no? The erroneous use of evacuated tubes may also affect the results. So marami tayong mga pre-analytical errors, no, arising from incorrect volume of blood in the tube. Remember yung evacuated tubes natin, normally meron yan silang tawag nito, may vacuum, no, vacuumized naman na sila. So pagtusok mo nung yung needle, sinasak na niya normally yung naturally rather yung amount of blood na kailangan or sapat dun sa anticoagulant na nasa loob ng tube. Now, pag pinush mo dahil gusto mong umabot dun sa sa mark, no? Or gusto mong ubusin yung laman ng syringe mo, that may be a problem, no, with the ratio of anticoagulant and blood volume. Hindi magiging tama. Okay? May mga din, no? The usual problems is that hindi talaga natin nafe-feel. Okay? So hanggang 75% lang nung tube yung nafe-feel. Tapos i-stop na yung kanyang vacuum. Okay? So lesser ang blood volume. And that may decrease RBC size. No, tapos pag pinush mo naman, tinodo-todo mo naman, inubos mo, lumampas sa mark, o di problemang malaki, no? Sa ratio natin. So pag hindi sumapat yung anticoagulant dahil sobra-sobra yung blood na pinasok mo, that will lead to formation of blood clots, no? Hindi na gawa nung evacuated tubes yung purpose niya dahil pinush mo yung, tinodo-todo mo yung volume ng blood. Okay? No, common resolution na ginagawa in the lab is to prepare another tube. No? Kasi baka naman yung tube na ginamit mo talaga may problema with the vacuum. And so prepare another tube. Okay? And do not forget to accession it too, no? Para sa pasyente pa rin yun, no? Yung kanyang barcodes ay the same pa rin. So ang common resolution is to have another tube filled, no? Baka naman sakaling yung pangalawang tube ay umabot na dun sa mark, no, yung kanyang nasasak na blood. Okay? So remember, hindi mo naman pwedeng i-add, no? Hindi pwedeng mag 1 plus 1 dun sa evacuated tubes natin. Okay? So mag-a-alter ng results yun. So just fill another tube. Okay? Hindi mo na kailangang maglagay sa isang tube kasi bubuhos mo dun sa kabila. Okay? Wrong na. No? Okay, so additional things to note also when using evacuated tubes. Again, hindi mo nga pwedeng i-1 plus 1 yung same samples. Lalo hindi mo rin pwedeng i-1 plus 1 yung serum and plasma dahil magkaiba sila. Okay, so recall kung ano yung difference ng ating serum at plasma. Okay, and then using EDTA blood, no, to fill a serum tube would also result to altered results. Okay? Of course, because EDTA chelates or binds calcium. Okay? And then that would also lower calcium level if nagtetest tayo for calcium. Of course, pag improperly filled yung mga tubes natin, hindi umabot dun sa mark, baka naman may defect talaga yung tubes. That's why the common resolution is to fill, no, another tube. Okay? And then also, pag anticoagulated yung ating evacuated tube, remember to mix ASAP. Okay? So mix it by inversion. Okay? So mga 8 times. Okay? Na i-invert mo. Huwag naman yung isi-shake mo siyang talaga. No? Invert slowly but surely. Okay? Basta lang ma-mix yung ating sample. So, pag hindi mo kasi siya na-mix agad after filling the tube, may tendency na kumpul-kumpul yung blood natin dahil hindi siya equally na-mix with our anticoagulant. Okay, so CEDTA tubes are actually very sensitive. It could lead to decreased platelet count pag hindi natin siya tamang na mix by inversion. Okay? Sodium citrate tubes naman, madalas ding nagkaka-error for coagulation tests, no? Pag hindi natin na-mix properly. And then of course, you have to be mindful, no, yung anong color ng cap ng evacuated tube, yung dapat ay gamitin mo for a particular type of request or test. So pag wrong yung anticoagulant na nagamit mo, wrong din yung magiging result, no? For example, if you're going to do chromosomal studies, the best anticoagulated tube to use is that one which contains sodium heparin. Okay? Hindi pwede yung lithium dahil toxic ito sa cells. So for the syringe collection naman, it's quite commonly performed for single collection. Okay? Tapos kung hindi naman mahirap kunan, so syringe method tayo. However, if there are several tubes to be collected, so you perform venipuncture using the ETS or evacuated tube system, okay, for multiple collections. Now, for patients na medyo manipis ang ugat or yung mga bata, okay, or elderly, the butterfly system is most efficient, no, na gamitin for blood collection. Now, meron lang tayong drawback for syringe collection. So, medyo prone ang ating samples, no, to hemolysis and clotting, lalo na pag matagal yung pag-transfer or hindi masyadong na-mix properly, no, after transferring. So, yun lang naman. But it's still quite commonly performed here, no, sa atin. So, for venipuncture sites, lalo na for blood culture, it's ideally done cleaning the area with povidone iodine or betadine, no, or tincture of iodine to ensure na walang contaminants, no, sa site of collection for blood culture. However, it's not ideal to use povidone iodine or tincture of iodine if your collection is for blood chem, okay, because it would affect yung ating mga electrolytes like potassium, no, phosphorus, and even uric acid is also affected by the presence of iodine. So kung blood chem ka lang naman, pwede na yung 70%, no, isopropyl alcohol to cleanse the area. Okay, again, for blood culture, kailangan na talaga ng povidone iodine to remove, no, contaminants dun sa ating culture site. However, if, for example, you're going to collect a specimen or blood specimen for blood culture and some other tests, like siguro may blood chem din siya. So what they usually do is to clean the site with alcohol and then iodine. And then, pag medyo several seconds, no, to a minute, nire-remove naman nila yung iodine to ensure na hindi maapektuhan yung subsequent tests. Okay? So, ganun. May iodine pa rin. Kaya lang tinatanggal siya with alcohol. Okay? And then, if for example, part of the assay is for blood alcohol test, okay? So, magde-determine ka ng alcohol level, dapat hindi alcohol ang gamitin nating pang cleanse ng blood ng kanyang puncture site. So, use non-alcohol cleaner, no, for that purpose. Then next is the order of draw. So this is the most common factor, no, na pwedeng mag-change ng result under phlebotomist control. So it's important to follow the order of draw para hindi mag-contaminate yung mga iba't ibang klaseng anticoagulant na nasa mga tubes. Okay? So blood must be collected with the patient's arm na nasa arm position, okay, para hindi backflow, no, yung anticoagulated blood, no, sa needle, okay, para makontaminate yung next tube. Alright. So, correct order of draw, dapat blood culture muna, no? And then, di ba meron na tayo nung alam na natin yung order. Tingnan natin sa next slide. Okay, so the correct order of draw is as follows. No? So, blood culture muna, no? The yellow or yellow-black top na mga tubes. Then we have the coagulation tubes, no? Yung mga light blue colored. And then we have the red top, yung mga non-additive tubes. And then we have yung SST, no? Yung mga serum separator tubes na pwedeng gold ang color or red-gray, depends, no? And then we have the sodium heparin tubes, okay? Na dapat nauna yung dark green, okay? And then yung plasma separator tubes. Although dito sa drawing natin nauna si light, okay? Light green yung ating plasma separator tubes. And then EDTA, no, lavender top. And then yung ating pale yellow for acid citrate. Tapos yung ating si EDTA lavender top no after ni green. Okay? And then acid citrate dextrose tapos si light gray. All right? So with regards to the green tubes, okay? For some order draw, okay, they would follow yung ating SST. But as to light or green, light or dark green ang mauna, for some references, it would say dark green and then followed by the light green, no? Basta yung ating concern would be where the greens should be placed, no? So they would be used after SST prior to EDTA. So how does it vary? So for example, yung ating EDTA or heparin tubes, pwedeng makapag-increase ng PT and APTT test results natin for HEMA pag nalagyan natin siya prior to citrate tubes. Okay? And then si EDTA contamination naman, pwede siyang mag-result ng mataas na potassium levels. Okay? So, kailangan follow lang natin yung ating order of draw.
So, chilling of samples may also be required, no, for especially assays involving determination of ammonia or acid phosphatase, catecholamines, lactic acid, and in most cases, blood gases and pH. So, ganito, no, may ice bath yung ating samples. Pwedeng may rock gaya nito or pwedeng directly itinutusok sila dun sa ice.
And then we have certain cases where we need to keep samples warm, no? So, yung hindi masyadong malayo sa body temperature na 36 to 37 degrees. So, this can be easily done by adding a warmer block, no? Meron yan, no? Yung mga plastic blocks na umiinit, okay? Tansyahin lang natin kasi minsan nagiging masyadong mainit sila. Sobra na sa 37 degrees. So, irap lang yung ating sample with tissue, no? And then tabihan lang nung warmer block para hindi bumaba masyado yung temperature, no? In comparison to the body temp. So mga examples no, ng mga procedures where we need to maintain temperature at 37 degrees, no, 36, 37 degrees Celsius is yung ating mga cold agglutinins and cryoglobulins. No? So medyo active sila pag malamig masyado. So makonsume sila. No? So dapat natin silang i-inhibit from being consumed. No? Kasi kailangan natin silang i-assay or i-determine. Okay? So ah ito yung mga pwede nating igawin, no? Pwede silang ilagay sa mga mini water bath, yan, para ah they would remain inactive. Okay? Otherwise, wala na tayong maasay, kinahurot na sila pag masyadong malamig yung temperature, na-activate sila pag malamig. And then finally, exposure to light. So sometimes may mga elements or analytes tayo na masyadong sensitive sa light, no? Whether natural light or artificial light. So nagbe-breakdown sila gaya ni bilirubin. Okay? So they should be collected in amber tubes, gaya na makikita natin. O yung mga tubes na nakarap in foil or nakarap in carbon paper. May mga ganyan tayo. Also, other tests na nilalagay sa mga protected tubes or assays for vitamins, no? Vitamin C, E, and K because ito rin sila ay napaka-sensitive sa light. Okay?
So, moving on to criteria for recollection or sample rejection.
Now, moving on to the general criteria for correct sample collection. No? So, tandaan, ito yung mga guidelines natin. So, number one, each sample must have its own label. Huwag kalimutan, mortal sin na nagpa-process tayo ng sample na walang label or hindi na accession. Okay? So, they should be attached to the primary container at yung request nila ay dapat meron din siyang identifier similar na nandun sa container. Okay? Each sample must have the name of the test to be performed on the label, no? Para hindi tayo lost sa lab, alam natin kung anong gawin natin sa samples natin. So labels must have patient's complete name, hospital number, or unique identifier. Okay? So given yan. Dapat nandun yung kanyang pangalan or if not, the unique identifier for that patient. Next, the sample must be collected within the time limit requested. So, kunyari, fasting yung sample natin. So, nasa 8 to 12 hours lang yung fasting natin. Hindi pwedeng lumampas dahil pag na-overfast yung pasyente natin, that could also affect the analytes na gusto nating i-measure or i-assay. Now, samples in syringes must have needles removed and the syringe cap before transport. Pero hindi natin tinatanggap yan. In most hospitals, we don't accept samples na nasa syringe. They have to be transferred into specific tubes kung asan sila. Specific tubes na ideal for the tests na gagawin natin sa specimen. Okay? And then urine samples must have the label on the container and not on the lid. Pero ang practice natin is both meron dapat, no? Lid and container. Okay, so syempre, of course, if you're going to transfer your blood samples from the syringe into specific anticoagulated tubes, again, piliin yung tamang anticoagulated tube for the test being paid by the patient. Okay, and then anticoagulated blood collection must at least be 75% full. Pag hindi umabot, mag-collecta ulit ng panibagong tubes. All coagulation tubes must be at least 90% full. Otherwise, magre-repeat collection ka niyan. Okay, tubes may not be used beyond the expiration date. Of course, part ng QC/QA natin na to ensure no accurate ang results, lahat ng gamit natin, hindi lang sterile, dapat ito din ay hindi lumampas sa expiration date. Otherwise, no, hindi na niya ma-perform yung dapat na magawa niya dun sa sample natin. Okay? Certain samples may not be exposed to light, of course, like bilirubin, delays in centrifugation or processing must be free of clots, no? Siyempre, anticoagulated samples must be free from hemolysis or lipemia. Okay, so to continue, blood samples drawn above an IV site are unacceptable. Okay? Kasi syempre, dun dadalo yung fluid galing sa IV bags. Eh, pwede naman na dun sa arm kung saan may IV, provided na sa ibang vessel, nasa ibang blood vessel, hindi yung same blood vessel. Okay? Oo, pwede yung nasa baba ng IV site, pero ibang blood vessel. Okay? The sample must be recollected if the results are not consistent with previous results of the patient. Of course, no, yung biglang change ng magre-recollect ka to determine kung yung ba ay tama, no, na may change talaga or dahil lang sa may mali sa processing. Now, for sample transport naman, no? So, once samples are collected, pwedeng yung phlebotomist na yung mag-deliver sa lab or kung kailangan mabilisan, pwede naman silang i-transport no, using transporter person, meron kang uutusan. Kung natin si phlebotomist, meron pa siyang 30 patients na kailangan kolektahin. Tapos yung isa dun sa mga pasyente na nakolektahan nagmamadali no, yung physician. So pwedeng iutos sa ibang personnel, no, lab personnel, or you could do it the faster way. We have the pneumatic tube system. No? So a system of tubes yan no, na may mga cylindrical containers that are passed through a network of tubes. No? So may compressed air yan or partial vacuum. Kaya ang tendency nito dahil sa sobrang bilis minsan, the samples may be shaken. No? Kung hindi naman masyadong maselan yung test, pwedeng-pwede ito. Okay? Pero kung yung test na kailangan natin gawin ay sensitive, no, edi iutos mo na lang. Or si phlebotomist na nga lang ang mag-deliver ng sample. Ayan, so usually we follow triple packaging system. Okay? So you have your primary container, which is yung pinaglagyan talaga ng sample. So kung blood yung sample natin, yung pinaka-container no, nung blood, yun yung primary container. So your primary container must be placed in a secondary container. Dapat leak-proof or yung hindi nila babasag yung primary container. So kailangan may merong parang cushion yung primary container natin. Okay? Very common example nun ay yung plastic self-sealing bag. Pwedeng-pwede siya. Or meron naman tayong mga plastic canisters na parang meron siyang insulation. Okay? So doon natin nilalagay yung ating mga tubes no, para hindi mabasag. Okay, so pag-transport natin, pwedeng isang sample or a multiple set of samples, pero isang pasyente lang, okay, sa isang bag. Hindi pwedeng mag-mix-mix yung iba't ibang pasyente. Kung iba-ibang pasyente, iba-ibang container dapat yan. Okay? Hindi sila inilalagay sa isang bag lang. And then, syempre, labels, very important. Kung triple packaging yan, yung label sa primary container, dapat ay makita dun sa secondary container at makita rin sa third container natin. Kung maraming samples, pwede naman yung ganito, nakapack na siya. May rack sa loob. Tapos may pwede naman ganito. Okay, so pag additional guidelines for sample transport, especially if long distances. So, kailangan pa natin ipadala galing sa Davao, papunta ng Maynila, sa RITM, for example. So, ang primary container, ang ating container should be yung triple packaging talaga. So, the primary container is wrapped in absorbent package bago siya ilagay dun sa secondary container para hindi maalog-alog yung iyong primary container sa loob ng secondary container. Okay? And then, si secondary container, inilalagay natin dun sa third container, which is usually provided by yung freight companies or shipping companies. Okay? Medyo hard cardboard yun. No? And then dapat kompleto yung label doon. So may biohazard na symbol and lahat ng mga details na kailangan makita pag nag-check ng contents, makita sa labas ng container. Note, kung blood ang sample natin at hindi naman whole blood ang kailangang i-assay, if for example you're supposed to assay serum or plasma, they have to be separated from the cells before transport. Otherwise, mahimolize yung sample, wala, sira ang specimen natin. So these are examples of specimen containers, no, for long distances. So parang merong ice bag, may ganito, and then kitang-kita naman yung biohazard. And then of course, yung mga i-airmail natin na mga containers, naka-cardboard sila. Ito mga bags to eh. So usually, yung ating pag-transport ng mga samples, no, it's mandated by the IATA or International Air Transport Association, yung mga dangerous goods regulation committee natin doon. So ayan, meron yung mga ganito na logo, infectious substance, at nakaklasify sila into 2 categories. So these are the categories, no, for infectious substances. We have biological substance category A. So kasama niyan ay yung mga known cultures na alam na natin, no, yung mga sample. So anthracis, botulinum, dengue virus, Ebola, Francisella, ito yung mga nagkukos ng life-threatening or fatal disease in healthy humans. So category A. Ang category B naman, ito yung mga hindi masyado nakakamatay. Yung may known treatment like adenovirus, streptococcal bacteria, no, samples, urine, feces, blood, live infected animals. Yung mga hindi pa natin alam kung ano yung bacteria doon, they fall under category B. Yan, no? So yung mga samples ng mga pasyente. Pero ang category A, yung mga known cultures na ng mga organisms na to. Okay? So that ends activity 9, no? Pre-lab discussion for activity 9.